first of all, I must say that as entrepreneurs, we are extremely delighted at the number of times government calls us to get our feedback, which is very, very valuable because, you know, it's actually for the people that you're making law, which, you know, Mr. Sinha calls us their consumers, which is great to hear. It's very important and very good that our feedback gets taken.
We are a service provider.
I think, you know, what happens, especially in the technology industry, one of the important things is, as you know, many new sectors get created which probably had no definition in the past. And I think we would probably broadly classify them into what are principal companies and what are platform companies.
Right.
And commerce marketplaces are a subset of platform companies, but you know, companies like cab aggregation, food ordering, Google, Twitter,
so basically regulation is not keeping pace with innovation in that sense.
I'm coming to that. So the companies which are platforms by large, where, you know, I think the content is created by someone else. You know, on Google, for example, if I post content, Google's not really responsible for that content. Sure, Google has to comply, making sure that if some content which is objectionable shows up, they should help the government take it down, but they're not responsible for that content. Similarly, the lines, you know, of what is owned by a platform versus what is not owned by a platform, many times is very blurred.
So what is it that you would like them to do?
So I think, you know, if we are able to clarify further as to what is in the domain of platforms and what is not in the domain of platforms, that'll be very helpful, because otherwise what can tend to happen is the laws which are written many, many years back around, let's say, for example, how should goods taxation work in the country, they are subject to interpretation of different...
I think that's a very valid point. That's a very valid point. As I just said, policy making is a dynamic process. And the way we can do it collaboratively in the most effective manner possible is for you all to come to us. If it's a taxation issue, you come to us in the Ministry of Finance. If it's a policy making matter on e-commerce, obviously the Commerce Ministry is responsible. And you tell us where the shoe pinches. Where is the pain point, right? Tell us specifically in terms of the policy, the language, where you feel that there is a lack of clarity. Tell us what the alternative language would be. How would you actually define it specifically? And then we can get into a discussion around, is it possible, not possible, what are the benefits, what are the advantages? And obviously, you know, as far as policy making is concerned, you obviously want to get on with your business and scale it quickly. That's what you need to do on your end. That's why the collaboration is required, because for us, there's a slightly other set of priorities that we have to think about. We have to make sure that it is fair to everybody, that it is transparent, that the national interest is not compromised in any way, that tax revenues are not reduced in any manner. So on our end, we have a very legitimate set of issues as well. And so the dialogue really is about trying to understand, okay, you have to do what you have to do and accomplish. We have to make sure that as custodians of, you know, your best interests and as stewards and in the responsibilities that we have, how can we best serve those interests as well?
Deepinder, you want to come in with a question or comment? Or?
So I have a question which zooms out even more, right? So we are pretty much the only tech company based out of here which is trying to build a global business. And it is very hard for us to build a global business out of India. Had we been based out of somewhere else, it would have been relatively much easier. There are some things like you can't transfer money outside of India very, very easily, and there are these FEMA regulations, and the RBI like questions you like 20 times for every time you are about to remit even a $100K transaction outside of India, right? We understand why those laws were made, but those laws hurt us quite a bit, and those laws were made because somebody misused some of the laws. How do we balance the good and the bad here?
With respect to FEMA, you know, I think RBI is very responsive. The doors are always open with respect to discussing how things can be streamlined. As you know, with Governor Rajan, we've taken a number of very bold steps, whether it's payment banks, whether it's opening up masala bonds, whether it's monetary targeting, and all of those measures you've seen that government and RBI have worked together very collaboratively and taken some very you know, important steps. Similarly, if you have any recommendations on what can be done for companies to really be be able to remit money outside of India and you're being restricted by FEMA, let's talk about it. My sense is that larger companies have been able to operate from India, make acquisitions. Tatas have done that, many others have done that without too much trouble. So let's find out exactly what your pain point is. Let's get very specific and let's try and solve that. Now, with respect to the ESOP taxation, there's a very straightforward way of understanding that. You have to recognize that around the world, particularly in the US and UK, the moment shares vest, they are something of value and it is income and you have to pay taxes on it. You may not have liquidity. You obviously understand the difference between cash and value. There is value that's accrued. If somebody were to give you a house which is of real value but no cash, you'd have to pay tax on that as well. So the shares are the same thing. They are property. When you get shares, you have to pay taxes on it, whether it's liquid or not liquid. And by the way, that's how it works in the US, in UK and elsewhere. So I think we cannot violate certain principles of taxation in this regard. I want you to understand India's fiscal position so that we have a proper context for asking for fiscal concessions. Our expenditure is 18 lakh crores. Our total revenues are 12.5 lakh crores. Every year we run a deficit of 5.5 lakh crores. You cannot run, yes, maybe you can finance your business for some period in that fashion, but nobody can run a business that way. Nobody can run a household that way. And effectively the 5.5 lakh crore deficit that we have every year, we are borrowing for that. And who's going to pay for that borrowing? It's your children. So if you want a tax concession today, effectively you're taking it from your children in the future.
What is government doing to get more institutional investors on board? I read your Twitter comment yesterday saying, the government is not VCs, right? They're not going to open funds, go to the VCs. But there are no VCs, right? VCs don't spend money on innovation, right?
So Kunal, if you want to come in on that, and then I'll get the minister as well.
There are no incentives for me to opt for a digital payment, right? And we all know that how much of GDP could be potentially locked in inefficient payments, right? So can we expect government to think about really, I mean, I've heard in the past comments where, but I have not seen anything that kind of really make an impact at a most basic level on choosing a digital payment method.
Yeah. So let me first answer the question about institutional investors. You're exactly right. Today, if you look at venture capital in India, 90 to 95% of that comes from outside of India. So we have, the teachers' retirement system of Texas. We have the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund. We have GIC of Singapore. We have these kinds of long-term investors that are investing in venture capital funds outside of India. And then those are the ones that are funding innovation in India. We've got to change that. We have to get to a situation where 50% or at least of the venture capital money that's coming in, that is in India, is domestic money. And so what we have to do is we have to build a pool of domestic LPs, limited partners. That is exactly what we are trying to do. So with the India Aspiration Fund, we are providing through SIDBI anchor money for domestic venture capital funds. That money from SIDBI through the India Aspiration Fund, which is already off to a great start, is being matched by LIC. So LIC is also becoming a limited partner and investing in these funds. Once we have LIC and SIDBI in there, and we have other insurance companies also coming in, and we are working towards it. I'm personally, trying to push that to happen. In addition to that, we then have high net worth individuals and others that can create pooling vehicles so that they can come into these domestic venture capital funds as well. It takes time. For China, they also went from a situation of 90% foreign money to now 40-50% foreign money. It took them about a decade to get there. We've just started. Thank you for voting us into power. We've now got a chance to get this done. Give us another chance in 2019. We'll get it fully done.
The sales pitch has started already.
Who said politics is not a continuous process? Now, let me answer your question about a cashless economy. You know that is the stated policy priority of this government. We are working on a variety of different mechanisms to be able to do that. Jan Dhan is an example of that, right? Now that 100% of Indian households have bank accounts, we are moving to a situation where all government benefits are going through these accounts. So whether it is your Narega payment, whether it is your pension, scholarship, all of that is flowing into bank accounts.
Question now is that beyond just playing a facilitating role, can the centre really push when it comes to timelines, when it comes to trying to address these ambiguities and clear up the grey areas? Can you actually put timelines in place so that people are not going from pillar to post, are not going from finance to DIPP to rural development and so on and so forth, to just have basic operational issues being addressed?
No, of course we have to have timelines. The budget making process gives us very specific timelines. When we announce things in the budget, then we try and get them done. We announced the India Aspiration Fund, we got it done. The Atal Innovation Mission, we got that done. We said we would boost startups, we're doing that with Startup India. So of course we are accountable. Of course we have a sense of urgency around what we have to accomplish. So please come to us with what you think is required and we'll get it done.
So thank you very much, and many thanks to all of you for joining us here on this CNBC TV18 special. We'll keep you updated on what finally is announced and unveiled by the Prime Minister as part of Startup India. From all of us here for now, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.